All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first in our monthly series for our joint North Carolina APCO-NENA Health and Wellness webinar series. I'm Jason Compton, the president of North Carolina NENA, and joining us today is Christine Moore, the president of North Carolina APCO. And then we have our two guest speakers with us today who will also be joining us as instructors of our training course at our July 29th chapter meeting in Hendersonville. So with us today, we have Monica Howard with the Hendersonville Police Department. Monica has 21 years of 911 and law enforcement experience. She is an experienced, trained peer supporter, and she is North Carolina NENA's Health and Wellness Director for the Western region of North Carolina.
And we also have Rick Baker, who is a licensed clinician and also the founder and clinical director of Responder Support Services and clinical director of the Western North Carolina Peer Support Network. So welcome, Monica and Rick.
Morning.
Morning. Thank you.
Well, just to get us started, what we hope today is kind of just a flowing conversation, nothing real structured, but I think we'd like to talk a little bit about the difference between CISM and peer support, squash some myths and misconceptions, and we'll kind of just go from there. So Rick or Monica, you want to start us off and tell us about your experience and kind of talk us through the difference between those two?
You want to start, Monica?
Sure. So when I first heard about peer support, my husband had been involved in an officer-involved shooting, and I was told that I was working dispatch, and he worked at a neighboring agency. I sent back up to his location, and you know, he was critically injured, and the suspect was shot and killed by my husband and his partner. And so after this happened, you know, he had gotten out of the hospital and I was already back at work, and told me that I had to be at a debriefing at a local community college, and that it was mandatory and I had to be there. And I was like, okay. So I went, and they you know, debrief the situation. There was a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I did learn a lot that night. And there was somebody that was there that wasn't involved directly with this incident. And I didn't realize at the time that, you know, they read the rules. Was I listening? No, because I had just been through all of this, you know, critical incident and was just kind of sitting there in disbelief. But I didn't realize that this person didn't belong there. And so since then, I've obviously learned more about peer support, but this person was detrimental to my healing and understanding of the situation that went on. This person sat there and more or less hijacked the critical incident and wasn't on scene and wasn't involved with any of it. I'm kind of a touch me not person. I don't want people that I don't know and love hugging me, touching me, you know, giving me emotional support. And this person did all of that. And so I was immediately like, I don't want anything to do with this. So learning from this, I took peer support training a few years later. And when I was sitting in the class, I had this aha moment of, this was wrong. This was done improperly. And unless I get involved, it could happen again. It could happen to somebody else. I didn't get out of it what I needed out of it. This could happen to somebody else. I have to stop this. So I go and I take peer support training. And my husband was still, you know, against it. He was like, I don't want to sit in a circle. I don't want to talk to people. I just want to be left alone. And which was fine. And we did the peer support training, me and a couple other people at my department. And once we had that training under our belt, we learned so much. I didn't realize that there was actual peer support that didn't occur in this circle after a critical incident. I didn't realize that peer support could happen literally every single day inside your department and was happening, but you just didn't know what it was called, right? So you had people that were struggling after a call or struggling with something at home, and just you sitting there and talking to these folks is peer support. And I had no idea. I thought that peer support was just debriefing after critical incidents. And learning this, I was like, okay, well, there's so much more that you can do. People that don't like talking in front of a crowd could still do this. And having those skills that I learned during the class made me understand that there were people that were struggling that I had no idea were struggling. And just them talking about it helped. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest difference between doing a formal debriefing and doing one-on-one peer support with other people, is that you don't have to be comfortable doing both. You can do one or the other, or you can do both, but you don't have to have that thought process of, if I go to this peer support training, I'm going to have to, be painted into this box of only doing group debriefings. The knowledge that I learned in that class has helped me help other people. And that was the biggest thing that I learned, is that I didn't have to do a group debriefing to help people. There are other people that I've realized along the way in the past 15 years that have struggled and didn't need a group debriefing because they didn't have this traumatic incident. It was cumulative stress that they were dealing with, and they just needed help to get through it. And that one-on-one peer support was able to lead them in the right direction. And most of the time, you can talk somebody through, a situation, but there have been times that it's above my pay grade. It's above my wheelhouse. And that's where Rick has come in, because, with him being our clinical director, I can send somebody to him, and it's really neat how it works in the mountains. But we have, groups that donate money to our peer support group that will pay co-pays and stuff like that if your insurance doesn't cover it fully. We were fortunate and fought with United Healthcare to get Rick as a chosen provider. So our folks don't have to pay a copay. They are now embedded with us, which, we've made huge strides with that. But I'll let Rick talk a little bit more about that. But there are times that it's just too much for you to handle as a peer. You have to have those resources to hand that person off to, because you don't have the training that's necessary for that.
Yeah, let me just add a little bit. Monica's absolutely right about kind of the reputation that peer support has had from generation ago, and that it really wasn't done well in a lot of agencies, and a lot of personnel had bad experiences with peer support. And it's come a long way in the last 10 years or so. And it's really a much different experience than it was back in the day. And I'll still hear some of the old school personnel that are still working saying, nah, don't go to that, it doesn't work. It's come a long way, and it's been refined a great deal. And it's much more than just a debriefing. A lot of people think peer support is debriefing, and there's a broad range of services. Monica mentioned the one-on-one peer support. Everybody that's listening to this is a peer supporter, whether they know it or not, and whether they have training or not, because they all have somebody they talk to, or there's somebody that talks to them, and that's peer support. And so formal peer support training just enhances their ability to do those one-on-one trainings. They don't have to do the group stuff, and there are a broad range of small group and larger group peer support interventions. There's peer support interventions where there's no talking at all. For example, RITS, just providing basic needs to personnel following an incident. I also do this for the Department of Agriculture, and after the Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico, the Fed sent me to Puerto Rico for a week or 2 weeks. And the first week, all we did was RITS for peer support, just giving people cases of water, giving people MREs, handing them bottles of bug spray, and meeting those basic needs is also peer support. And it's also an important part of peer support. So it's much broader than most people think it is. But everyone in emergency services is a peer supporter, whether they have training or not.
Yeah, I can't help but smile and shake my head the whole time both of you guys are talking because, you know, Monica, your sharing of your story, speaks to me, and we've all been through our individual events, and you're right. It is that cumulative stress. I think that gets a lot of people. Sometimes it's critical incident alone. Sometimes it's the critical incident that busts the dam. But we see when we sit together for 12 hours a day in the same room and talk to each other, people who are struggling with everyday stressors and occurrences, and then you layer on the unique stressors faced by folks that work in our industry or in emergency services in general, and you get this whole other layer of stuff that weighs down all that on top of it. And it's funny, you have a conversation like this, and every time you learn something new, and or you say, I hadn't thought about it, and it's like, you're absolutely right. That thing that we do here in the South, where we show up with food and send a card and call you and tell you we love you and we're thinking about you, that's peer support. And I like that way of introducing it, because one of the things that I would like to focus on is there's this whole stigma around this, especially in our industry. I think there's a stigma around mental health in our culture in general in the United States, but we're first responders. You're supposed to be tough. This is part of the job. You're supposed to shake it off. There's no crying in dispatch. How many times have we heard that? But so to go from there, what are some of the myths and misconceptions? You've talked on a big one here, but is there any further or things that you guys want to share on that, or based even in your own experience?
I mean, based on my experience, the biggest myth of peer support is that it's not going to be helpful. And I think that's from the experience folks have had in the past. And what I've seen is that myth can become a reality if the peer team isn't adequately trained, if they're not following the model, for example, like making sure that everyone in the room was involved in the incident. If they don't do that, and we have people in there that weren't part of that incident, then it is going to be a bad experience. So I think, maintaining that fidelity to the peer support model helps ensure that that the experiences are positive. Another misconception or myth about peer support is it's going to make things worse for the responders that are sitting in that circle, and that is far from the case. And I have rarely heard anyone say they left a peer support intervention feeling worse than they did going in. So there's a couple of myths. There's also a lot of myths and misconceptions from the clinical community that I kind of spend my time in about peer support. And I have a lot of clinicians that'll come up to me and say, "What are you doing all this work with peer support and CISM? That's not real treatment." And they're absolutely right. It's not a treatment. So one of the misconceptions is that it's treatment. It's not treatment. It's just a peer-led intervention, and it is not a treatment. And it's a very effective intervention. And I don't know if Monica wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, that is one of the things that, you hear as a myth, and you'll have officers and dispatchers alike say, well, I'm not going to go in there and let them shrink my head. Okay, well, these are literally your peers. We don't know how to do that, first of all. And Rick is there as a peer, or Joelle, and anybody that's on our clinical group, they're there as a peer, right? That's the great thing about their services, is they're all linked to emergency services. This is all they do, is emergency services. So that's a big misconception that you get, is that they think that they're going to go there and this is like mental health care, or that they're going to ask them questions that they're not comfortable about. It's literally asking about the event. It's not, asking about things that's happened in your past. It's not, and that's what we try to get through to people, to get them to come. Our department has actually gone away from saying, hey, this is mandatory, you have to be there, because of that. We want you to go on your own free will, not because somebody told you to go. When somebody tells you to go, this is how they show up. And they sit there the entire time with those arms crossed, and you're not going to get out of it what you need to get out of it as if you go willingly. And once people go, that's our biggest help. Our biggest help indicator is once people go, they're like, hey, that really helped me. And it wasn't at all what I thought it was. And you get that conversation going, and they start talking about, oh, this is actually what happened. This is what it is. This is not, somebody asking you questions and making you lay on a couch or hold hands. They think that somebody's going to try to hug them. They think that somebody's going to, ask them weird questions. And it's just a misconception that they don't understand what it is, because they've either A, never been, or been to one that hasn't been done properly 20 years ago, and it's not what they expected. So we want willing participants, not forced people.
So along those same lines, Monica and Rick, one of the things that I hear when it comes to the actual CISM part of it, not just the peer support, is I don't want to go and share my feelings with other people, or I don't want to have to talk. I just want to listen. And is that okay for somebody to go and just listen and just be a part of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Participation is not mandatory, and no one is ever forced in peer support to say that they're not comfortable saying, or not speak at all if they don't want to. And I think that's something else that leads to a lot of the misconceptions. If a peer team doesn't recognize that, hey, just let people talk only if they want to, and puts them on the spot to talk, that will give someone a bad experience. So again, having good team leaders who are trained really well and recognize that if this person doesn't want to talk, they don't have to, and we may target them for a one-on-one check-in after the debriefing, or something even less formal than that. But if they don't want to talk, they don't have to.
Most of the time, what we see with the people that show up and automatically say, yeah, I'm just here, I don't want to talk, I don't want to be, the only thing we make them say is their name and what they do at the department. Past that, we don't make them talk. But the majority of the time, the people that come in and say, I'm not going to talk, once other people start sharing, they share as well. And I can remember maybe 2 times in hundreds of debriefings that somebody came in and was like, yeah, I'm not going to talk. And then they didn't. It was very rare when that happens, because once you open that dialogue, they realize what it is, and it's not what they thought. And that's why they didn't want to talk, because they thought it was something different. And
then after, the ones that come in committed to not talking are the ones at the end will say, how do I get this training?
So I think when Jason and I first kind of came up with the concept of doing these wellness webinars for our membership, it was, how do we destigmatize the actual act of asking for help? I think we're starting to do a good job of creating these CISM teams and peer support teams and things like that. But what good is it in having those established if the people don't come to it? So I guess my question is, one, how do we destigmatize it for the person needing help? But also, how do we get leaders to buy into that program for their team and say, I need to ensure that my team knows there is nothing punitive that will come from it. There is nothing that's going to go in a file anywhere. We're not going to discuss that you reached out for help, in an effort to help destigmatize it. So what would your thoughts be on how we can encourage that?
I think one of the things that'll help destigmatize it is if we are constantly dosing our personnel with information about it, sending them articles and podcasts and things where we have other responders talking about peer support. We have journal articles that talk about the importance of peer support and how it's helping, and make it kind of a non-issue. The more we talk about something, the less negative energy it has around it. We're working on the same thing with first responder suicide, is talk about it instead of shying away from it. So the more we talk about something, the more ordinary that it can become. And And so I think that'll help destigmatize it. Also, if we have any champions, someone who's gone through it and is willing to step up and say, hey, I did this, and this was super helpful. And it probably saved my family a lot of aggravation and maybe saved my career by going through this and doing this. So I think that'll help destigmatize it if we just keep talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've touched on this, and I just want to reiterate, people should definitely understand that these situations are confidential. That the core tenet of this is that you and I can have this conversation one-on-one, and maybe it's just you and I having a conversation casually in front of other people or quietly sitting next to each other at a console at 3 o'clock in the morning, or maybe it's you're texting or calling me, or we grabbed a drink somewhere, or whatever the case is. But I'm not here to report back to your boss. I'm not here to tell anybody else. Monica mentioned earlier, being a bridge between a peer and a clinician. There are going to be things that we can't help with, and getting you to someone that is vetted, that one of us has had a great experience with, that I trust them, so you can trust them. That is a important piece for me that I think many people don't realize, or even if you say it, they don't believe you.
Yeah. Jason, let me speak to the confidentiality part. We'll couple points on that, because it is really important that these conversations are protected, whether it's in a group or one-on-one. And there's a lot of time spent in peer support training talking about the need for confidentiality and for a peer intervention to be like Vegas. What happens there stays there. It doesn't go elsewhere. Also, there's legislation that protects these peer conversations, so they are protected by law, almost like a doctor-patient protections. There's legislation. I forget the name of the House bill, but it is a protected conversation. So these conversations cannot go anywhere.
Great. Well, certainly, I know we're getting close to our time here. So if you guys have something additionally you want to share, you've got my mind swirling for tons of topics that we could follow up on forever. But I definitely want you to have a chance to talk about the class that you guys are going to present after our chapter meeting in Hendersonville. But and Christine, if you have something more, certainly jump in as well. But
yeah, I think if people are watching this and saying, I need help, but I don't know that I want to talk to somebody in my jurisdiction. I want to talk to somebody outside. Is there a resource that they can go to? Is there a website where they could even maybe reach out to you, Rick, and say, I need help, but I don't want anybody in my area to be involved?
Certainly, if they want peer support, they want a peer-to-peer experience with somebody outside of their district, they can reach out to the Western North Carolina Peer Support Network. They can reach out through a message to our Facebook page or our 800 number. And I don't have that number memorized off the top of my head. Monica, do you have that? You're muted.
I can find it. I'll find it.
And then if they want to reach out and even have an initial consultation with a clinician, my company, Responder Support Services, has a 24/7 crisis line that's staffed by a clinician that only works with first responders. And that's free. It doesn't cost anything. So anybody can call that number 24/7 and have an initial conversation with a clinician, especially if they're in crisis. They certainly should call that number. And that number, which I don't have memorized either, is 828-209-8038. And that is 100% free. It doesn't cost anything.
And will you repeat that phone number for us?
Absolutely. 828-209-8038.
And then for Western Carolina Peer Support or Western North Carolina Peer Support Network, that's how you find it on Facebook. We can put the links with the video as well. And the 800 number is 866-962-2476. 866-962-2476. And then you can reach out on the Facebook page. It's monitored as well. Maybe not 24 hours a day because we have to sleep, but In the day, definitely it's monitored. If it's at night, please call the 800 number and they will wake us up. I think the biggest thing to take away from peer support is if you are struggling, find somebody to talk to. Whether they have training, they don't have training, find somebody to talk to. Don't suffer by yourself. That's the biggest thing, is that fear is real. Obviously, it's definitely a feeling that you worry about how other people are going to think about you, what they're going to think you're weak. We get paid to literally save other people. And then when you need saving, you're dependent on yourself. That's not fair. That's not how this should work. You have saved countless lives. And then when you need saving, somebody else should be able to help you through that. You shouldn't be struggling by yourself. But fear makes you do that, right? And that's the thing is we're losing people, right? Your job, if for some stupid reason you did lose your job can be replaced, but you can't be replaced to your family. And I think that's what gets lost a lot of times, is because people are so scared to reach out in fear that something's going to happen. And at our department, we actually wrote it into policy to where that policy protects you from that. And that makes people more apt to be able to reach out and say, hey, I need help. We have embedded clinicians through responder support services to where they don't have to worry about that, right? They can reach out to somebody, and our department never finds out about it because they're automatically paid and nobody ever gets a bill. There are so many things that you can do, but if we still have that stigma and that negative connotation around people reaching out for help, and people that have reached out for help not speaking up and saying, hey, I did this and it helped me, we're rowing backwards. We're literally rowing backwards from where we should be.
I would
losing people.
I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this to join our mission that we have, that Monica and I are part of with the Western North Carolina Peer Support Network, is to make it okay to not be okay.
Amen.
And make it okay to reach out for help when you're not okay. The days of suck it up, buttercup are over. And so join the mission that Monica and I and the folks out here in the West are really committed to, is to change that part of the culture. So please reach out to Monica or us and ask us what you can do to join that mission and to help bring this change to your agencies and your regions.
Yeah. I already said it once, but amen to that. And, you know, one of my biggest catchphrases is it's okay not to be okay. And folks, to struggle is completely human. And just because you have to put on your superhero suit and be a hero when you come to work doesn't mean that you're not allowed to struggle and not allowed to not be okay. And we've all not been okay at some point in our lives. And so you're not alone. Someone else may not be experiencing or have experienced exactly what you're going through. But we do our best to pair you with folks who can relate, who can be good peers. And there are a lot of great programs all across the state, and people don't know they exist or think that they're not free to reach out to them. And you hear the Western North Carolina Peer Support. Don't think you have to be in Western North Carolina to call them, as Monica and Rick are telling you. And there are other resources out there. There's North Carolina First Responder Peer Support that's run by my friend Dina Lee out here in Raleigh. And we have embedded clinicians here across agencies in Wake County, and we'll hear from them in a later series as well. And we're going to try to get you guys in front of as many resources as possible so that you can see faces and hear names and know organizations that are there for you to be supported. And to just throw out another resource there, you know, in the world of Facebook land, North Carolina Peer Support, Western North Carolina Peer Support, you can find all of these easily online just by Facebook. But to throw another number out there, 1-855-7-NC-PEER is the number to the North Carolina Peer Support Hotline, 1-855-7-NC-PEER. Part of this mission that Christine and I are starting are to put together a packet of resources so you can sort of have a one-stop shop by coming to either of the associations and getting hooked into any of these great organizations across the state. So, I hope we'll see you guys in Hendersonville. If not, I hope we see you guys online. If you have questions, if there's things that you want to hear about, please let us know. And, just on behalf of the NENA folks, we really hope to see your faces and get good participation in this. And this has got to be a holistic effort that we all have to get involved in and work together. We're not going to be able to defeat this thing by ourselves, but together we can make a real difference that really does save folks' lives.
And I just want to chime in and say again, thank you, Rick and Monica, for joining us today for this first kind of installment of these webinars that we're going to be hosting to help destigmatize the asking for help. And again, at our joint North Carolina APCO and North Carolina NENA chapter meeting on July 29th in Hendersonville, we'll be hearing from you guys as you guys present behavioral health and emergency services and recognizing occupational stressors. I love that title because it kind of takes that whole peer support and CISM kind of thought out of it to engage people in what to be looking for. So I'm very excited for that. It will immediately follow the chapter meetings, and for those that attend that full day will be eligible for 6 hours of continuing education credits. So thank you for being a part of that. Thank you for joining us today, and I know we'll have many more conversations in the future. Jason?
Yeah, thank you guys. And I'll just close out by reminding folks that this training is free, so please come. I know there's not a lot of free things out there these days, and we're dipping ourselves back into the times of traveling and being together again. So, come get a good experience of your own, just being in a room full of your peers who are all here to learn more and know more about this and get some peer support right there. So we hope to see you in Hendersonville in a few weeks. Monica, Rick, anything from you guys? All right.
Thanks for letting us sit in on this today, and hope to see everybody at Hendersonville for that free training. It's free, but feel free to tip Monica and me.
That's right. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.